uh, by the fourth line from the bottom, V'hine Atam, speaking about the level of the tzaddikim are not on the higher level, a high level as the Baal Tshuva, because Baal Tshuva takes something that fell very low, the Nitzoitis that fell in the Gimel Klip Satmei lower, in the Nitzoitis, the sparks that fell into the sins that were intentional sins, and they are able to elevate, whereas the tzaddik is only able to elevate those things that are from Klippas Noiga. And that is the message. This is all brought in because the Rebbe is trying to explain when we say Ad Lo Yoda Mein Arer Haman LeBaruch Mordechai. We explained earlier in the Maimer that Arer Haman is the idea that there is the meaning behind Haman. The inner point of Haman is the positive, meaning the idea that Haman is meant to be transformed. So the Rebbe asked if so, there, and that's why the gematria of Arer Haman Baruch Mordechai is the same, 502. But on the other hand, if so, why is there an issue of not knowing the difference? Seemingly there is no difference. To explain that, he started explaining the different avoidance of the Baal Tshuva versus the Tzad. So now, from the fourth line from the bottom of page 4, the 320 in the print in the number of the page. Reason why it's possible to elevate the sparks in the Avedas and the intentional Avedas, even though they are the opposite of Hashem's will. Because tshuva is so powerful, it reaches Hashem's very essence, what's called the master of the will. Since he is the level of the master of the will, therefore he is not obligated by, and he's not grasped by the will. And we'll soon explain what that means. From the perspective of Hashem's essence, so the Rebbe refers over here to Maimer Chazal. Chazal said that the Hashem looked at the at Tzadikim and Rishoyim, and it says, Hashem said, I do not know which of the two I desire, the actions of the Rishoyim or the Tzadikim, top of page 321. But he chose by free choice, not for any other reason, but he chose this on his own to desire the actions of tzaddikim. So that means it's not like a case where Hashem is locked into something. This is something that he himself chose to do so for no other reason than because he has the freedom of choice to do so. Therefore, it's impossible that the intentional sins should have any type of value and importance and significance in comparison to Hashem. They should have the power to conceal the sparks of Kedusha that's found in them. Meaning, if I don't want something because the thing hurts me, the thing disgusts me, not because of my choice, but because the thing itself, so then I am like stuck in that rut. This is what I like, this is what I dislike, this is entirely what defines me. But if I chose A over B, not because of anything that A can have better than B, so then I'm not locked into it. I can say, well, now that you did tshuva, B doesn't matter to me. I can elevate now the sparks of B, even though they weren't elevatable before, if you use that word. So now he said, the Torah mitzvahs, the master of the will that's not at all grasped in the will of Torah mitzvahs, Sheches Dafkai, the avodah of tshuva, comes down specifically through the avodah of tshuva. This means tzaddikim afilu elu she'igilu dargus ovdei Hashem ba'avarab b'tam nogim tzaddikim, even those that reach the level of serving Hashem with a great love and a love of delight. even Sheyesh Lam Tainug B'Avodosam, since they have a delight and enjoyment in their avodah. Arei Hem B'chinas Yesh Misha'oyev Metzias Kedusha. The Alter Rebbe explains that the tzaddik is still someone. There is a Metzias over here that loves Hashem. So true, it's a holy Metzias, it's a Metzias of Kedusha, but because it's a Metzias, they can transcend Seder Ishtalshlus and connect with the level of Balarotz, which is completely undefined, because their definition of themselves, even in Kedusha, is limiting and doesn't allow them to go to the highest level. Therefore, tzaddikim only draw down the level of Hashem's will, which is what they do in their performance of Torah mitzvahs. But they do not connect with the level of the Baal Harotz and the master of the will, the source where the will of Hashem and Torah mitzvahs came from. As opposed to Baal Tshuva, since their avodah is an approach of being nullifying themselves, they're not satisfied with their state. That is the nature of Baal Tshuva. They tear themselves away from their previous state. That's the idea, similar to what it says, the Chazal say about Moshe Rabbeinu, the words of Surah Mekan, I will turn away from here. And therefore, since their self and their established being is being torn apart, that's why. And therefore, they could draw down the level of the master. That's what it means. But Chazal say until he doesn't know between cursed is Mordechai, cursed is Haman, and blessed is Mordechai. That capability to be able to transform Haman's curse into a state of the blessing of Mordechai. It's the avoid of lo yada, going transcending oneself beyond knowledge. A state of bittless beyond reason and knowledge. It's only through that as one touch in the level that it says, I do not know which one of them I desire. From that level, that the Balarotz and that Hashem doesn't know which one he desires, so then all limitations are off. From there comes down the power to transform the idea that Haman is cursed to Mordechai getting a brach. So all of this was brought in to explain an interesting part of the note of the Tzemach Tzedek. The Tzemach Tzedek, instead of pointing out to the Maimer of the Alter Rebbe by title, Chayev Inish L'Psumah Bepuria, instead, he points out the Maimer of the Alter Rebbe by just calling it the Maimer of Purim. Because by doing so, he's calling your attention to the whole concept of Purim. We're not just the title, Chayev Inish L'Psumah Adol Yada, it's just a title, but it's nothing in the title that's trying to communicate anything to us. But rather by saying, because usually that's how the titles of the Mamarim are. The Tzedek will say, go look up that mimer. I'm going to have a name for a mimer. And that's how I find it. But you don't pay attention to the title of the mimer when it's used as a reference point. By calling it the mimer of Purim, that makes you start thinking, what's that mimer of Purim about? Ad lo yada. Ad lo yada is what causes that the Baruch, the Or Haman should become Baruch Mordechai. That's negeh to our mimer. Point is, we could say concerning the note that the Tzemach Tzedek points to them, calling it just the mimer of Purim. It's the mimer that starts with the opening words. A person is obligated till he does not know. The Tzemach Tzedek just calls him the mimer of Purim. Even though there's many Mamorim that are speaking about matters of Purim and therefore can be easily mistaken. Like we mentioned earlier, that in the mitzvah of Adol Yada, it has no restrictions, therefore it's applicable the entire time of Purim. Whereas other mitzvahs, you read the Megillah once by night, once by day, that's it. You give shalach manas to one person, you give matanas lavyoyim to two people, you fulfill the mitzvah. You say al nisir and shemen esra and then benching, and that's it. Whereas ad yoda is the state encompassing the entire Purim. So therefore, that term is something that's applicable to the entire Purim, and it's hinted in the words that he says, the mimer of Purim, because that's like the essential part of Purim, the Rebbe says. The Rebbe says, now, what is the purpose that the Tzemach Tzedek uses this type of description? No, in Yonim, Purim, top of page 6. The intention is to hint at the two aspects of Purim. One aspect that he's hinting at, both the service of transforming that Haman should be cursed and into Ardchai being blessed. And both he's hinting at the empowerment for that. How does one come to a state where Arur Haman becomes Baruch Mordechai? That's when we reach a level of Lo Yoda. Like it's actually explained in this Maimer of the Alter Rebbe of Tshbit Melech, upon which Tzemach Tzedek writes the note. I'm sorry, like it's explained in this Maimer of Purim, in the Maimer of Purim that Tzemach Tzedek points to. That the meaning of Adla Yoda is Shaidei Amsiris Nefesh Alamaylam Adas, through the self-sacrifice that's beyond reason. We reach Hashem's very essence, that in comparison to Hashem's very essence, all are completely equal. Therefore, one could turn over the Arur Haman into Baruch Mordechai. And why does he point to that? Because it's identical to the concept that Alter Rebbe is speaking about in the Maimer of our week's parsha of Tshbit Melech, that he spoke about the Mashal HaKadmoini. That the Mashal HaKadmoini means the mashal, the casing, the vessel that contains Kadmoini Shaloilam, the Oirin Sof. Should the Muslim being a Mashal HaKadmoini, who in Apulam, the Helam HaMosh. It's what we are supposed to do. We're supposed to take the concealment of the mashal that we spoke about at length at the beginning, that a mashal, a metaphor, is even a greater concealment than a riddle is. And we have to take that concealment to make it a vessel and a means of revelation that the Oirin stuff should become revealed. How? What's one of the tools? He said through learning Pnimius HaTorah that acts like the salt to the meat, and that also gives forth something that we spoke at the beginning of the ois, like we said. Also, that's through the self-sacrifice that comes from the essence of the soul that's beyond intellect, and also based Baruch, like we spoke about it, this is based at length. That our essence of our soul, which is beyond intellect, when we have Mesiras Nefesh that taps into our essence, it taps into the level of the Eibishter that's beyond the essence. So now the Torah, which is normally a mashal and covers over Hashem's essence, and only we see is the chachma of it. We don't see the essence kadmoine shaloylam. Now it becomes transformed, just like Baruch Arur Haman becomes transformed into Baruch Mordechai through Ad Yada, through Mesiras Nefesh that's beyond understanding. The same thing through the Mesiras Nefesh that we have also brought about through learning Chassidus, we reach the level of beyond intellect, and then the Torah becomes a vehicle and a vessel to reveal that level that is higher than everything. Yes, if we could add this idea of the transformation of darkness to light. Both in Purim transform the idea that the cursedness of Haman should become the blessing of Mordechai. Whether we're transforming the mashal of the early one of the Ein Sof Shagam, Helam mashal, also the concealment of the metaphor in the Torah, should become a vessel and a vehicle to reveal the early one of the world, the Ein Sof. The room is gamba pasuk Tshbit Melech shabai maskul maimer is also hinted in the pasuk of Tshbit Melech that salt should not be stopped from upon the karbonis. That with that pasuk the mimer begins. Like it's explained in the Torah concerning salt, it makes meat tastier. He used the word sweeten, but it means it makes it more gishmak. According to Chassidus, the idea of meat that comes from the blood that's in the heart. And the blood that's in the heart, what does that represent in Avodas Hashem? Those are the midas of the animal soul. Those are the passion and the blood of the heart, etc., etc. Now, this, the tzarich lahavchon menakotz alakotz, we have to take those emotions. We have to take that idea of the bloody emotions of the nefesh habahamis and transform them from one extreme to another extreme. How does one do so? For this, we need specifically salt. And he goes on to explain the reason why salt is called the covenant of your God. Shoyrish hadinim. The shoyrish hadinim is because we know that the idea of the root of all types of judgments and all types of levels of bitterness, etc., that comes that comes down from the level of Shem Elakim. Sheyesh by Kuf Chof Tzirufim. Shem Elakim has 120 different ways how it can be the combined. The combinations of Shem Elakim has 120 different possibilities of combinations because, as we know, 2 letters can make 2 words, 3 letters, 6 words. When you have 5 letters, you can have 120 different ways of lining up the letters with each other. So these 120 combinations, these 120 combinations of Shem Elakim that descend all the way till the end of the world of Asiyah. Then it goes further. Asiyah is still one of Hashem's holy words. From the 120 combinations that are in the worlds of Kedusha, there's also 120 combinations of Chayis in the level of Noiga. Now, when you combine them, the 120 in Kedusha and the 120 in Klippas Noiga, 2 times 120 is 240. Between the combination of both of them, the 120 in Kedusha and the 120 that results from that in Klippa, you get mar, bitter. Beis pam kufchaf, twice 120. Amalek is also 240. Think about it. The kuf is 100. Ayin and lamed is 70 and 30. It's another 200. Mem is 40. So 240 is the also numerical equivalent of mar, the twice Elikim. And Amalek we know is Hamakir the Arar Haman. Amalek is the source of Haman being cursed. And the salt is what sweetens the judgments. Inyan Hamarirus, in the idea of the bitterness, Hanal, the above mentioned bitterness. Through drawing down from the root and the primary levels of severities of Kedusha. Siddur says, brings down a lashon from Kabbalah, Ein hagvuras nimtakim el b'sharsh. That gvuras and severities only become sweetened, become lessened through their root. So in other words, the negative results of Shem Elakim in Asiyah and going down into Klippa and coming down to Amalek, you need to bring Elikim, the source of it, down upon it. When you bring Elikim, the source of it, down upon it, so then it takes care of that negative aspect. So that's why it's Melach Bris Elikecha. It's specifically the covenant of Shem Elikim, because for it to sweeten, Melach's function is to deal with the meat, to take care of the meat. How do you manage that? You manage that specifically through the level of Shem Elakim. You need to have Shem Elakim to be able to do that. By the way, I just wanted to add something that a previous page that Rebbe says in the footnote, in footnote 35, that once we say that because of the Baal Harotz, he doesn't know which one he wants. That's not to negate the power of Torah mitzvahs, just the opposite. When a person doesn't want something because of they don't like it, they are disgusted by it, whatever, those can have different levels. When a person chooses not to want something, that's complete choice coming from the very being of that person. That is, in a way, in some ways, more powerful. And therefore, when Hashem actually chose Torah mitzvahs eventually, that is the ultimate thing. Except for tshuva, we're able to tap into a level that his choice doesn't impact the transformation of the sparks. But still in all, it's a very powerful choice. And because of that, the klippas have no room, and the Ar Haman has no room. And the only thing is that we could, like we said before, we could extricate the sparks we mentioned yesterday. We cannot actually make that the zdainis themselves, the avedas themselves, should become mitzvahs. It's only the sparks of the avedas we mentioned yesterday can become mitzvahs. Any questions? Last ois of the mimer. Ois hey, bottom of the 6th page. Yesh lahois velakashers and klolus parts by Yikra. We can add and connect this whole idea that we're talking about using the highest, most levels to transform the lowest levels in Klippa, Balshuva, the level of Arar Ham should be transformed to Baruch Mordechai. It's making the mashal, which conceals godliness, to reveal godliness. All of these things have to do with the general overarching theme of the Parsha of Vayikra. Many years we read Parts Vayikra and the Shabbos that's close to Purim, like this year's Kviyas, that this is Parshas Vayikra we're reading this week. Then move this understood. Parshas Vayikra Merumas Minyan of Malos Shel Purim, that in Parshas Vayikra is hinted from the matters and the quality of Purim. The Hinei Askolos HaParsha Hi Vayikra Al Moshe. The beginning of the Parsha is, it says, he called to Moshe. What is this idea of he called to Moshe? The entire Torah, it only starts off that Hashem spoke to Moshe. It doesn't say he called him. What's this calling about that he's saying in our parsha? Rashi, like Rashi explains, Shalachol Dibris, Shalachol Amiris, Shalachol Tzivuyim, all the times where it says Vaydaber, all the times where it says Vayomer Hashem Moshe, all the times where it says Tzav, that Hashem commands, Chadma Kriya, it was preceded by Hashem's calling, and calling indicates Lashon Chibur. It shows an expression of love, because he doesn't suddenly appear and say, hey, I want you to do this and this. A worker, you tell him, hey, I want you to do this. Someone that you love, someone that you want to express your love, you say, hi there, Chaim, etc., and then you go on to what you need from him. I know this means. So the Rebbe takes this Maimer Chazal and says, Kodma Kriya, that the Kriya, the calling, preceded it. When you say preceding, in Chassidus it means that it's something that's higher. It's not just preceding it in time, but it's also in quality it precedes. When Hashem says Vayikra, it is higher, it precedes, it's beyond all the times when Hashem said Vayidaber and Vayomer and Tzav. Okay, moving Gama Masha Kos Vayikra Stam, like it's also understood from where it just says Vayikra alone. It doesn't say Vayikra Hashem El Moshe. It says Vayikra El Moshe, and he called. V'loi Vayikra Havaya. It doesn't say Havaya called, Vayidaber Havaya, Vayomer Havaya, like it says Hashem spoke and Hashem said. Kivin Shakriya Shal Chiba Ba Makadosh Baruch Hu Ba'atz. Since this calling of love is coming from Hashem himself, that's why it says Vayikra. Top of the last page, the way it's higher, even than the name Yud Kevavke. The law Yisram is Bishum Oischulu, that's not hinted in any letter, in any name. It's totally beyond everything, which is the message that we were talking about before. The level where Tshuva comes from, the level of Ad Lo Yoda, beyond all limitations and so on, that causes this transformation. So we see the beginning of our Parsha is referring to that highest, most level, the level of the essence, the Balarotzen, and the level of Adlo Yoda and the Sirius Nefesh, beyond Seder Ishtalsh. Where do we see the transformative nature of it, which is the whole point of these Mamorim? You're transforming the mashal to be a vessel. You're transforming Arur Haman to be Baruch Mordechai. So we see the transformative nature at the end of the parsha. The Siyum parsha, the conclusion of the parsha, who the nefesh kisechta, a person that will sin. It's not just referring to someone that sinned unintentionally, which a lot of the karbonuses amaveris chatas are meant for an unintentional sin. It's also referring to someone that sinned intentionally in certain situations. And the sin is umaloi by mal. He made a me'ilah chashom rachman samakash baruch. It's like a rebellion. It's not like any type of sin. It's like it harkens back a little bit to what we spoke about in Nimrod. The Gam Shvu al Sheker is talking about someone swearing falsely. That we know that's one of the worst things. It's the third thing in Aseres Adibris, not to swear falsely. And that is the type of person that we're talking about over here towards the end of our parsha. To such a degree that the last words in the parsha means to make him guilty with it. Seemingly it's not understood. How do you fit in from Vayikra, the highest, most level, to this low thing? So the name of the parsha is not just for the beginning, but the name of the parsha indicates the content of the entire parsha, including the end of the parsha. The end of the parsha has more of a connection to the name of the parsha than the middle of the parsha. Mitzvah the cloud. You know it's because of the rule that the beginning is staked out in the end, and the end is staked out in the beginning. Yes, there's a special connection between the conclusion of the parsha to the beginning. How could it be that the words to make him guilty are the conclusions of Parshas Vayikra, which Vayikra is an expression of love? Inyan, who the idea behind this is, it's not talking about his guilt that he remains in a negative, but it's talking about the transformation from the evil to the good. Through atoning, he'll be forgiven. What is the true atonement? What is the true forgiveness? When the intentional sins are transformed to merits. Specifically in this, where we have this type of transformation of the intentional sins, the mitzvahs, that's where you can see the true love of Hashem, to the Yidden, that even transcends Torah, because Torah says that the person did something bad, but Hashem says, no, we can deal with it. Even when a Jewish person transgresses the mitzvahs of the Torah and he does a ma'aseh that's kin to Esav, which is the opposite of what Yaakov is about. Even then, I love the Yaakov that's in him. It says that the Torah says, behold, Esav is a brother to Yaakov, meaning there's a level where Yaakov and Esav, that means there's an equivalency between them, and still I love them. Behind this means though from the perspective of Hashem's essence, it says, I do not know who I desire, like we said before. Kanalsiv Gimel, and that connects with the pasuk about Va'ovas Yankov, like it says, Yankov, behold, Esav is a brother to Yankov. Seemingly both of them are equal. Despite that, I loved Yaakov, and Esav I hated. Hashem atones and forgives on the person's sins. Till the intentional sins become mitzvahs. Through that becomes the general idea of transforming darkness to light and bitter to sweet. In the coming Mashiach came speedily with simchas and everlasting joy upon their head. Any questions?